Hello, my friends, and welcome to another edition of the Daniel Hendrick Experience. I am super glad you're here and also super excited about the guest that we have for today's show. But before we get to that, just want to tell you, for those of you who've been asking about where to get my book, Know You Know, you can go to danielhendrick.com, and there you'll find a tab for my book, Know You Know, which chronicles my life story as an opera singer, losing my voice and getting it back and singing all over the world. And also, there on the same website, you can find a tab for the podcast. And if you would please like it, subscribe to it, it really helps us to know that you guys are out there supporting us. All right, so today on the podcast, we have Bonita Hyman, born in New York, in Brooklyn, and living in Germany since 1995. She has performed as a featured soloist on numerous stages in the United States and Europe, such as the Lyric Opera of Chicago, one of my favorites, La Scala in Milano, the Metropolitan Opera, the Dallas Opera, the Opera Orchestra of New York. Anyhow, I'm super excited about talking to her today, all the way from Germany. We're going to be speaking. So without any further ado, let's bring in the amazing mezzo soprano, Bonita Hyman. Bonita!
Hi.
Wow. What an honor to meet you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I've already been stalking you on the internet and everything to find out in a good way. In a good way. I'm not a mass killer or anything.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, just a lover of great voices,
Well, thank you. Thank you.
which you are that. I saw a little bit. Well, I'll talk about that later, but I just wanted to welcome you and thanks for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, here she is, famed mezzo soprano Bonita Hyman. Thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome. I'm
Tell
very
us,
excited.
are you excited? Excellent. So, where are you right now?
I'm at home. I'm in Linden, Germany.
Okay,
That's
wonderful.
in Hessen. That's um halfway between Marburg and Frankfurt.
Mm, wonderful. And now you're teaching there, or are you singing there? What are you doing?
I'm teaching,
Okay.
but I'm still
Um,
singing too.
yeah, boy, would I like to get a couple of lessons with you. My goodness.
Thank you.
So I'm super glad that you're here. And what we do on the podcast is just kind of talk about things with famous singers that normally people don't get to hear about. So that's why I wanted to talk to you. Where are you from? How did you get started in this crazy business of ours? And
Woo,
maybe,
it's
of
a
course,
it's a long story. Okay.
of course, I already know a lot because I saw some interviews with you online. But
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
you were born
um,
in Harlem, right?
no, I was born in Brooklyn and
In Brooklyn. That's right.
in
Brooklyn.
Bedford-Stuyvesant.
That's right.
Let's die. Yep.
Wow. And so were you singing in church when you started or school or how did
Oh,
that get
well,
yeah.
my mother was a church musician.
Mhm.
Um, she worked with a choir and played Hammond organ and
Mm.
piano. And this was she was completely self-taught or almost completely self-taught.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was the musician in the church I grew up in,
And what denomination was that?
Baptist.
Baptist church. Okay, I grew up Pentecostal, so they're like
So,
cousins.
yeah. Yeah.
uh and I understand your grandmother was a singer also
Yes. Well, she sang
in
for herself
church.
in
Uh-huh.
church and this kind of thing. I never met my maternal grandmother, and I've never met either of my grandmothers.
Wow.
They
Okay.
both died long before I was born. Well, my mother's mother died long before I was born,
Mhm.
and she passed young at 47.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And my father's mother also passed relatively young at 50.
Mm,
She passed right around the same time that I was born.
amazing. So that would have been like 1965, 1970 when you were born.
No.
1980.
No, going the wrong direction.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Wonderful. So you got your start singing in church, I'm assuming. But then
Yes.
what was that thing that kind of took you into the classical realm as well?
Well, I started singing in church at around age 6,
Okay.
and I was kind of a prodigy kind of thing, as a little
I'm
girl.
sure. Right.
And at around 8, I started taking lessons at the Stuyvesant School of Music, which was a little neighborhood school,
Okay.
with a lady named Elsie Graham.
Hmm.
So, and she was a Trinidadian with this little school that she cultivated there in the
Wow.
neighborhood. It was based in a brownstone.
Mm-hmm.
When she passed, her daughter took it over,
Mm-hmm.
Patricia Robinson,
Okay.
and she's now herself elderly, but
Mm.
she's still working with the school. But I knew her as a small child. I was a small child and she was a teenager.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And did they recognize right away when they were working with your voice at that school that you had this unique instrument and talent?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, they had me singing lots of solos and stuff. I At that age, it's way too young to work any real technique per se,
Yes. Yes.
you know. And as a teacher myself, I am mm, kind of adamant about not overworking children's voices,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just letting it be,
Yeah,
you
they
know.
could use that message on Broadway a little bit.
Hello. They got these babies screaming.
Yeah, because a lot of times they teach these little kids, these youngsters, to really use the chest voice and belt a lot, and then 2 or 3 years later, they're having
Done.
difficulty singing. Yeah.
Yeah. Almost anyone who sung the lead in Annie has gone on to have vocal difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's stretching the instrument beyond where it really wants to go at a young age. So,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
good for you. So, tell us about your teaching there in Germany. What's that all about?
Well, it's kind of in addition to my career and
Yes.
to my work as a choral director.
Okay.
And so I'm kind of putting on several different hats at the same time. Yeah.
Wow.
And I have a son who's a special needs kid.
Okay.
And well, he's 25 now. He's no longer a kid. But when he was growing up, I was kind of switching between soloist, teacher, choral director, and mom.
Mom, you wore a lot of hats.
Yeah, I have almost as many hats as I have shoes, and I have a lot of shoes.
Wow, that's great. Good for you. Good for
Yeah.
you. And when I was researching you, looking at everything on the internet, I saw that you did a master class at the Met as well.
No,
Was
not at
that
the
not at the Met? Where was
no.
that master class?
Um, well, I gave quite a few. I gave one online at Spelman College.
Okay.
I did a master class at the University of California in Irvine as part of the
Okay.
African American Arts on Alliance Conference. Perhaps
Okay.
that's the one you're talking about.
Probably, yeah. Well, I'm a California boy, so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the credits that they gave me was, having sung at the Metropolitan Opera.
Uh-huh.
So that's probably where that
Where
idea
I
came.
got that link, right?
Right, right.
Well, you've certainly sung virtually everywhere, so that's pretty impressive, young lady. Wow.
Dude,
And did you
I
always
don't
have that?
know.
Did you always
Not just
have?
that, but
Did you always have both of those registers working for you, like I'm hearing on your recordings, or did you develop that?
well, I've always had a lower extension,
Mm-hmm.
even as a very young singer. Um, when I was 18 and
Mm-hmm.
had just started in the music school at Oberlin College.
Good college.
I had some good times there and
Good.
learned quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things I did was a production of Kismet, where I was the Aya to Tsubadaya.
Oh my gosh.
And, and that part had a low E.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, this is interesting. Because I went all through high school thinking I was a soprano.
Oh, okay. So what made you decide to go more for the mezzo thing? Just that bottom end opened up for you or
Well, I probably always was a mezzo.
uh-huh.
And in my last years in high school, I was very heavily involved in the choirs and in the music theater program and all that kind of stuff. It was a very arts orientated school. I was working with a gentleman by the name of Raymond Harvey,
Mm-hmm.
who went on, he was a very young man at the time. He
Okay.
went on to become a conductor himself, an orchestral conductor,
Wonderful.
among other things. His training was as a, a classical pianist and as
Mm.
a conductor, and he worked with us young people, teenagers. And one of the last things he told me was, when you go to Oberlin, tell them that you are a mezzo.
Mm.
I had no idea what a mezzo was,
Oh my God.
you know.
I could
So,
hear it right there. I could hear it right there in your laugh. It was like perfectly placed.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I have the same top that I had then,
Amazing.
but over the years, the middle and the bottom have broadened.
Mm. And why do you think that happens? That happens to a lot of singers as we, now that I'm a senior citizen, 65, it's,
Hello.
same thing has happened to me. And when I sing now, a lot of times people say, oh, you're a baritone. And I'm like, it depends on what hour of the day. Usually I'm a tenor. But do you think it's just age and body chemistry that makes the chords a little thicker? Or is it technique just over the years?
It's a good question. What I've noticed in my life is that every 7 to 10 years, the voice changes,
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
you know, and um, giving birth also changes the voice.
Wow, I bet.
Well, this is not something that a man might know.
I bet. Well, when you look at the anatomy of what's happening there, right?
Yeah.
You've got
Yeah.
those core muscles being stretched out quite a bit. And uh,
Well, it's that, but it's also the hormonal changes.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
I was
because your
talking to
body
one of
looks different.
I was talking to one of the Sopranos on the podcast a few weeks ago, and she was saying through her career when it was that time of month and the hormones are changing, how she always had to navigate those differences where for the most part guys don't have to deal with that kind of stuff.
Well, with the cycle, it's a bit different because the body becomes a bit bloated with water,
Mm-hmm.
and the cords are a little bit um, water saturated, and
Mm.
that's different from pregnancy.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, what I found when I was expecting my son is that I sang like a bird.
Wow.
It's just like it just was like, wee, you know.
that that's wonderful.
When when it got to be kind of later on, towards the seventh, eighth month, ninth month, around in there, there was a kid in there in the way, so the support wasn't quite what it was. Yeah.
Right.
But the voice itself felt very free, you
That's
know.
wonderful. Wonderful.
And I noticed that once, oh, I have to get this here.
Sure. I'll cut
Okay,
that
there.
out.
No, I don't know if you can see that.
I cannot.
But no, there were some things that were flashing on my screen. That's all my security stuff doing its thing.
Oh, I thought you said I was flashing you on the screen. I'm like, oh
Oh,
no.
no, 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 no,
I'm
no.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Um, well, well, what I was saying is that mm, after having gone through the process of giving birth, the voice takes on different qualities. I found for myself that the voice got warmer, a bit darker,
mm,
and that the bottom also opened up more.
hmm
It became a bit deeper. I didn't lose any top, but the low end of the voice seemed to kind of fill out more.
mm.
So
Well, you have a
and
lot of that in your singing. I can tell you that. It's
well, thank you.
gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. And we're going to play a recording of you in a little bit so folks can hear what that's all about. I wanted to ask you too, since you were raised in church, did you do much gospel music singing in the Baptist church?
Well, my mom sang a lot of gospel.
Okay.
I tend it more in the direction of like the
Ah,
anthems and the hymns and the more sustained kind of stuff. I didn't really do much of the really shouty stuff.
okay. So you did the things like, "Great is thy faithfulness,
Yeah,
O Lord our Father," that kind of, the more
that kind
traditional kind of church hymns. And I sang a
of.
lot of that
Yeah.
myself. Yeah.
And my Heavenly Father watches over me.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
My
Yeah.
Heavenly Father watches over me. That one.
Oh, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen, we're getting a treat here with the superstar.
I'm just marking.
Ah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, speaking of marking, the folks out there probably don't even know what that is. And can you explain that opera singers do this frequently in rehearsal? What that's all about?
Well, some people some people mark and some don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on how you do it. If you mark in the wrong way, it can actually kind of throw you out of line.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if you can mark and kind of stay on your technique, then it helps save the voice,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But for people who don't mark in the right kind of way, it's actually better for them to sing out.
I get that. Yeah. So when she's talking about marking, ladies and gentlemen, it's not using your full voice during rehearsal so that you're blown out before the performance comes. I was
Exactly.
definitely a marker myself.
Oh yeah, yeah. Me too.
Okay.
Well,
But
for especially for long rehearsals, long staging rehearsals, you
I
have to.
remember I sang, there was a double cast of Tosca, and there was a tenor by the name of Vincenzo Scuderi
Mhm.
who was able to mark. Everything was exactly like he sang it, as if it was full voice, but it was all mezza voce the whole time. And I
Oh yeah,
was just amazed how he could be singing a high C or a high B with that voice. And that kind of inspired me to figure out how to do more of that. Like you're saying,
exactly.
with good technique, instead of losing The
The
system.
chord, yeah. When in the various casts of Electra that I've worked with, um, Ricardo Merbeth did this in Berlin.
Mm.
The voice always had that core in it, and she could really mark. And she, for a role like Electra, she really had to. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can't sing that full out every day, all day. You cannot do it.
Right.
Yeah. And who else did this? Nina Stemme.
Mm.
She could
Wow.
mark a high C, and with that, a lot of that whoop in there, you
Uh-huh.
know, and it was clean and crystalline, but without all the weight.
Wow. Yeah, Chris, I don't know if you know who Chris Merritt is, a famous tenor.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, incredible high notes. That's what he said too. And I'm like, did you sing falsetto on the high notes or what did you do? And he's like, no, I don't have a falsetto, just
Mhm.
soft. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Well,
Not
singing self takes even more support than singing loud in a lot of ways.
what do you mean by that?
Well, it's it's kind of like a very fine thread of sound, and it takes more compression to sing it well and not go
Mm.
breathy or
Uh-huh.
but having that fine core in the middle of it.
Wonderful explanation. Wow.
Does that make sense?
That makes total sense.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I
yeah.
agree with you. Yes. It's a different kind of compression too, right? Is it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You
And
want to
folks
get
out there,
it.
yeah, she's saying that when you sing soft, you have to give a little bit more. But for a lot of singers, when you give more diaphragmatically, the tendency is to close the throat. And
Mhm.
so you have to have all of these opposite things happening at the same time. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Throat has to stay relaxed. Wow.
Yes. That's something I'm working on all the time with my people, to keep the larynx relaxed, not pressed,
Right.
but spacious.
Yes.
So there's room to phonate.
Yes. I can hear that in your speaking voice. It's just
Oh,
floating there. And you have, I'm going to imitate it a little bit. It has that where I can hear the head voice above, but I hear that connection to your core simultaneously. That's beautiful.
well, thank you.
Did
I'm
you
not
have
even.
did you have that natural speaking voice that had that kind of resonant position there, or did you learn that over the years?
Hmm, that's a good question. It's something I've never really thought about. It seems to kind of have developed naturally over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've
Okay.
never really consciously thought of speaking one way or another.
Ah.
I do know that there are people who speak with a very high laryngeal position and they always sound very strained.
Yeah, they're sort of like this, and I was like, oh my goodness.
the
The
the Kermit clung.
yeah. Hello, I'm Kermit. Yeah. Yes, and I've heard a couple of those people like that over the years, and they have that strangled speaking voice, and then they go and sing, and they let it go, and I'm like, wow.
It's like, bless you.
Yeah. And I used to have a teacher that the reason I asked you about speaking, Charlotte Aldrich was her name in San Diego. And before ev- before every aria I was working with her, she would make me speak it like recondita and just finding that resonant space. And then she instructed me, okay, I want you to speak like that all the time because I was a little bit high with my larynx and tight. And so the voice you hear right now is not the voice that I had 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah,
So I learned
I
how to do
believe
it.
you.
And from singing, it just, you start to modulate things as you feel more relaxed.
Exactly. It's kind of comes by itself,
Mm-hmm.
you know. When I'm teaching, I notice in lessons that my students speak differently after we've been working.
Mm-hmm.
It's like their
Mm-hmm.
voice their voices become more resonant and more relaxed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I totally
And with my
understand.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't mean to
I
interrupt.
totally understand by hearing you. I'm
Mm,
sure they sound connected to head voice and core simultaneously, which a lot of times in speech it becomes very mouthy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did you
In
have any go right ahead. Excuse me.
so with my choirs also um with Kaleidoscope in particular, because that's the one I've been working with them for 12 years.
Mm,
That's kind of my family choir.
okay.
And the people who have been singing with the choir for a while, their speaking voices have changed in a good way.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
When new people come into the group and we go through the circle and introduce each other, the people who are veterans of the corps, they sound like professional singers.
Mm.
It's like you hear it right away. It's like, hmm, this
Amazing.
architect, judge, lawyer, therapist sounds like a singer.
Isn't that great?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Did you have one person as you were in school or younger, perhaps, that you said, I want to be like that opera singer that
Oh my
really
God.
inspired you?
Well, for almost every singer of color, Leontine.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
pretty good.
It's like, you know, she's like a force of nature.
That's a great way to describe it.
And you hear that sound, it's like, yeah.
It's like, how is that humanly possible to have the velocity of what she had and to continue to do it? It was just remarkable.
From what I understand, even at 97, she can still spin a tone.
Wow. Wow.
That's what I
Well,
heard.
well,
That's what
that's
I
a God thing right there.
But
Wow.
the great singers, of our childhood,
Mm-hmm.
the ones who are still living and are in good health, they're still putting out sound.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in Munich, I always stop by to see Felicia Weathers,
Mm-hmm.
and she is 86
Mm.
and feisty, got a lot of energy, tiny little thing, but energetic and full of life and everything. And she can still spin a tone at 86.
Isn't that amazing?
The technique is what it is,
Yes. Wow.
you
That is
know.
so great. When years ago, when I was studying in New York, I went to Carnegie Hall to hear L'Amico Fritz.
Oh
Yeah, yes. And the tenor, a famous Italian tenor, right now I can't remember his name, but he was like 82 years old
yeah, bless
and
him.
still sang that L'Amico Fritz, which I loved, uh,
It's,
gorgeously. Of
it's a
course,
freaking rock.
he didn't hold the phrases as long as he did when he was 30, but so to your point, it can still be there if you have a solid technique.
Might it have been Bergonzi?
It was not Bergonzi. Older than Bergonzi, it was like Tagliavini or something like that. So
Ooh.
really old one. Yeah. I'm dating myself now, how old I am, right? Now that
One
I
does
told you
march on.
I hit that big 65, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna ride that those discounts everywhere now. But
Well,
anyhow,
welcome
uh,
to the ARP.
exactly right. Okay, so Leontine Price. For me, when I was 16, I was going to sing the Lord's Prayer, the Malat version, at my
Mhm.
sister's wedding. And my dad said, go into the den, and there is a Reader's Digest album of this singer. And on there, on one of the things, is a religious section, and there was the Lord's Prayer. Well, I heard this guy sing. His name was Mario Lanza.
Oh, of
And,
course.
and I just flipped out. I had like this supernatural God experience. I felt like God was speaking to me, and I started listening to all of these funny names like Tosca and Rigoletto, and I had no idea that what that stuff was. And went to my dad, and I said, "Dad, what is all of this stuff with the funny languages?" He said, "Well, that's opera, son." And I'm like, "Dad, I want to be an opera singer." So
Not a
there's
fireman, an opera singer.
right. Wonderful. So over the years that you've sung, have you had like a favorite opera house that you've enjoyed the most singing at?
Oh my. Every experience is so different.
Mm-hmm.
So the the remodeled Berliner Staatsoper unter den Linden
Mm-hmm.
is lovely to sing in. Very nice to sing in. Very nice acoustic. You don't have to force the voice at all. It's just, you know, carries it
Wow.
right out. Beautiful house to sing in. Um, I found the Met was nice to sing in.
Really?
Hmm.
Okay.
Well, it's a mistake to get in that house. It's a big, big theater, but
Mm-hmm.
you can never push because when you push the voice, it's kind of counterproductive.
Mm-hmm.
It just needs to be well projected, well
Mm-hmm.
focused, and it sails right out.
Yes.
I think where else was nice? Mm, yeah, those are the two places that come
Okay. Well,
to the
those are
top
two
of
good
my head.
places.
Yeah, yeah.
And what do you think about some of the opera houses now using what they call reinforced sound?
Mm. I actually I have no experience with that. I don't know.
Microphones.
Well, yeah, I know what you mean,
Mm.
but I know
You
that.
you haven't seen that, but
Well, I know that when things are being recorded,
yes.
they have
Yes.
microphones, but those are
Yes.
not for amplification. That's to
Yes.
record the sound for like
Yes.
a broadcast or something like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When they did the HD broadcasts for Electra at the Met, there were microphones, but those are not for amplification. It's to
Yes.
pick up the sound.
Sure. Yeah. And that's fine, right? I
Mhm,
do have a little problem in some cases. I won't say where they're actually
mhm,
amplifying certain singers. And
mhm,
that's troublesome to me that in an opera house, you're going to amplify someone to make them fit perhaps the rest of the cast.
mhm. I've not experienced
Not
that.
her. Well, I'm super glad to hear that.
Mhm, mhm.
So,
Um, there is one production we did where the singers were amplified because there was electronic sound, uh,
mm,
and this the electronic sound was too loud for human voices to match.
well, that's reasonable, right? Or if you're outside or in an amphitheater or something,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
needs to be because trying to sing outside without an acoustic coming back at you could be very difficult.
It depends on where.
Hmm.
When I did a concertante porgy in Granada. I
Wow.
was at the Alhambra in the Carlos Cinco's amphitheater, and it was built in such a way that it amplified the sound,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
kind of like the Colosseum in Rome or something like this, but much
Mm-hmm.
smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So amplification was not necessary
Mm-hmm.
because the natural acoustic, the stone walls bounced everything back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sang with the Istanbul Symphony in one of those theaters in a place called Aspendos.
Mhm.
And the acoustic would go, I mean, it was so far up there. And my wife was up on the top, and you could virtually whisper and it would carry.
Yes.
And there's an example of singing with an 80-piece orchestra without amplification because it's just so beautiful. But I'm talking about places like Hyde Park, you know, when you're in, or in New York and the park there in Manhattan, like
In Central
Pavarotti
Park.
did, Central Park. You,
Yes.
he
Well,
had to
that's a
have
whole
that.
different situation. You've got
Yeah.
an audience of 100,000 people or
Yeah.
half a mile
Uh,
away.
and even the great Pavarotti needed a mic for that one. So,
Well, I would think so. But
yes.
this production I was talking about with the electronically enhanced sound, that was a production in Lyon of a piece called Les Nègres. It
Hmm.
was a world premiere based on the play by Jean Genet,
Mm-hmm.
composed by Michel Levinas.
Mm.
And the process of putting that together is a long story in itself. But
Wow.
it was a collaborative effort with the theater and an electronic music organization called Earcom.
Mm-hmm.
And they would do this sound concrete stuff that was very loud. And the singers were often singing like in monotones and stuff like that.
Mm.
And so it was necessary to amplify the sound in order for it to compete
Balance. Yeah.
the
Sure.
balance of those sounds.
Right. Yeah. That would be like why rock singers have to have a microphone because they have the guitars and the drums, and it's like you can't compete with that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hear this beautiful voice right now. And Bonita, can you explain to us what this is?
I believe that you have a recording of By and By.
Mm-hmm.
That's excuse me, a spiritual arranged by Edward Boatner.
Okay.
And
And your performance was where?
that was in Gießen at the Stadthalle, the
Wow.
Rathaus there.
Okay. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Put on your seatbelts. Brava.
Thank you.
Wow. You have the ability, and I'm going to just say it in my terms, and you can correct me. You're the master voice teacher here. So, but I hear you do these diminuendos as you're going up at times, and it just pops into this pocket. And I can tell just by the energetic nature of that, it just carries like crazy and it floats. Do you relate to it in that way, what you're doing?
Yeah, I call it a float actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I try to get it into a really high place,
Hmm.
lots of space, and very low support.
The very first thing when I was closing my eyes listening, the very first thing I felt, I noticed my throat. I relaxed my throat a little bit as you started to sing because I heard that place. And I'm like, oh Lord, look at the space she's creating in your larynx. Without,
Thank
like
you.
you said earlier, without a push. It's not a
No.
push down, but there's a being able to hold that pocket and then it just vibrates with such intensity.
Thank
Incredible.
you.
Yeah. And did you, over the years, learn how to do that, or did you kind of always have that ability?
Hmm. It's a bit of both.
Okay.
Hmm. It's always been something that has been kind of a part of me,
Mm-hmm.
but over the years, I've had to learn to kind of refine it a bit and to really get the right kind of support under it so that it doesn't get held.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. Yes. Hmm. So that type of singing that you're doing, when I'm talking to other singers, I always call that big voice. And people ask me, well, how are you saying that's big if they're singing soft? And I think the reason is that it has such carrying power because you have just a perfect modulation of frequency, freedom, and the result of that is it just carries like crazy. Am I right with that
Well, thank
analysis of your voice?
I guess so.
Mm-hmm.
You know
And the,
who really does that beautifully is Caballé.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's the famous Spanish soprano that she's talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Yes.
I had the privilege of hearing her live at
Mm.
the Fisher Hall in New York, and the way she could spin a high pianissimo, now that was like a force of nature.
Right.
And, and I admired that. I don't know if I did it quite the way she did.
Mm.
She's one of the great singers of the 20th century. But that's kind of what I work towards, that kind of thing, if that
Beautiful.
makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. May I ask you a tenor question?
Sure.
Okay. Do you think that you can connect falsetto with head voice?
Mm, that's something that I've kind of worked on with my tenors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's still something that I'm trying to work out myself a little bit, with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What I mostly try with my tenors is to get up and over with that inner lift,
Mm.
is in the top,
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't take too much weight up.
Yes.
you know. So it's probably a different way of saying the same thing.
Hmm. And when you say inner lift, you're referring to the soft palate or more than just the soft palate?
It's this is so, it's like an inner smile, all
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, this I call it the Gaumen because I teach in German, but a soft palate. Oh, ah, and then forward.
Wow.
Ah, ah, ah.
You
Does that
sounded
make
like a tenor right there. Yeah, because it's one thing to have that, but then to get the sound to go like you just did forward without the larynx wanting to lift to make it go there, that seems to be a
exactly?
lot of trouble for young tenors.
Oh, not just young ones.
Okay, right. Yes.
that that relaxed space there, so that
Mm-hmm.
in the pharynx for it to ring. You
Mm.
know? Because if it pops up, it closes up that space.
Yes.
I'm sitting here talking all this technique.
I love it. And normally I don't talk about technique this much with the people who are on the show, more about the struggles of life and being an opera singer. But the way you do that is just, it's masterful. So I wanted to get your perspective on that. And of course I teach all the time online. That's my gig now that I'm retired.
Mm,
But and I'm always trying to get the people to get that lift, but
hmm
always the struggle is the throat wants to follow that lift. So to get opposites happening simultaneously is always the trick, at
So it
least
puts
in
on kind of
my
like an echo. Yeah.
right.
Oh,
That's
we don't want the
hilarious.
echo clong. No.
Yeah, right. What? So what
But
is your thought about the vocal fry?
hate it.
Do you? Can you tell us why?
It's unhealthy.
The wow, that thing.
Mm.
It's
It
like
just
oh, like fingernails on a chalkboard, right?
yeah, it's like ooh, you know,
Because
it's
there's a
a
lot of that in gospel music.
well, the thing is that for people who have sung gospel music all their lives, they develop techniques to do that.
Yes, yes.
You know, it it is a another way of singing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are coming up with a classical technique and you're trying to imitate that, you can do yourself a lot of harm.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
kind
because
of, I'm sorry, you were speaking.
you're just pressing those chords together and then giving compression to create that. And
Yeah,
if you get tension around that, you're definitely going to have some problems.
yeah, yeah. You know, there are people who kind of do both,
Mm-hmm.
up to a certain point. But at some point, you kind of have to decide, are you going to do this or are you going to do that?
Mm, I get it.
Yeah, you know, because if you're really going to go in the direction of the gospel,
Mm-hmm.
jazz, pop, and all that stuff, then you go in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But if you're going to go classical and you really are serious about it, you
Mm-hmm.
have to decide. That's my opinion. Some
I
people say,
understand. Yeah. No, there's the freak every once in a while that can go multiple directions, but for most of us mortal people, you better stay in your lane, so to speak.
well, up to a point you can when you're young,
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of do that. But once you get to a certain point in your development, you kind of have to go one way or another.
Hmm. Interesting. So, do you have a favorite mezzo that you have enjoyed over the years?
Oh, I
Other
have a
than
bunch of.
yourself, of course.
Oh gosh, this, Shirley Verrett can do no wrong.
Ooh.
Grace Bumbry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had someone straight on. Oh, Florence Quivar, yes.
Okay. Wow.
Um, Sometimes I like Marilyn Horne and sometimes not so much.
Okay.
Um,
I met her once at the Met, and I thought I was meeting royalty.
yeah, she thought so too, I'm sure.
Ah, you're good. Are you sure you're not a politician as well?
No, there's something she does, brilliantly, of course, you
Hmm.
know, and Bartley does certain things.
Ooh, yeah. That one always confused me with what I thought of vocal technique, and it seems to me like she, yes, and
It's
she
like
breaks so many rules of what looks like tension, but yet when you just close your eyes and listen to it, it's amazing.
clean as a whistle.
Mm,
But you know what? Marilyn Horne got that same kind of cleanliness without doing all that.
exactly, exactly.
You know.
But hey, she did it, and it worked for her. Well, it's the same thing with like Franco Corelli, with the physical manipulation that he used laryngally, but
Mhm.
yet, man, what he was able to do with that top was just historic.
I have a story about him back
Tell
when I was
us.
a young singer. I had a session with his wife, Loretta Corelli,
Mm,
and I was living in New York, and I went to their apartment, which was not in the vicinity of Carnegie Hall in that general area.
mm-hmm.
And he had answered the door, and I didn't recognize that it was him.
Oh, okay.
And he was like in this what they call a wife beater t-shirt.
Uh huh. Okay. I know those. Yes.
I I thought he was the plumber or something.
Oh,
I had no idea he was who he was.
amazing.
At this time he was older. So, I didn't recognize him from, his heyday pictures,
Ah,
the whole matinee idol thing going on, you
that's
know.
what a great story.
And and I said, is Madame Corelli here? And he went and fetched his wife, and we had a vocal session, and he was hanging out in the kitchen, just kind of chill,
Amazing.
totally casual. And I was like, I had no idea that this incredibly famous singer was sitting there.
Probably better that you just thought it was the plumber instead of Franco there.
I literally thought that that he was there to repair something or whatever. It was who he was, you know. And
That's amazing.
I found out later because I don't she actually even told me, you know, and it came out later that that was him. It's like, oh,
Oh my goodness.
oh.
I had one of those faux pas as well when I was 20 years old. Maybe I was singing at an Italian restaurant in Palm Springs, and the owner was this Italian guy who really helped launch my career. But anyhow, I was there and singing, and one of the songs that people used to always ask for back then when I was a nice lyric tenor was Danny Boy.
Oh.
which I was named after, by the way. And
Oh,
yes. And so this table, there's about 10 people almost in the front of the where the stage
mhm.
was an African American gentleman, elderly, and he sent over a note. Can you sing Danny Boy? I hear you sing a great Danny Boy. I said, sure. So I sang Danny Boy. Now, mind you, my whole life I was raised playing baseball,
Mhm.
loved baseball, and all the way through high school, all star, all of that kind of stuff. So I sang Danny Boy, and then he calls me over to the table. Young man, that's the greatest Danny Boy I've ever heard in my life. Now, this is like 1977, and he shakes my hand, and there's $100 bill.
Oh,
And I say, well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And he said, can I have your autograph? No one ever asked me for my autograph before. And I'm like, oh, yeah, come on, sure. He says, no, I'm serious. I said, okay. So he gives me a paper and a pen. And I'm like, dear, I said, sorry, sir, what is your name? Hank.
Hank Aaron. Ah, ah,
And I just turned so red.
many
Here's
different
one of
ways.
my idols that I used to pretend to be, as a little kid playing baseball. Everybody wanted to be Hank Aaron because he was the guy that hit the home runs, right? So, anyhow, I thought, how classy was that? And he actually made me give him my autograph.
Well, the funny thing with a lot of people who are really great is that they are also very humble,
Mm-hmm.
you
And
know.
generous, right? Generous of spirit and approachable. And it's like, wow, that that made my year.
I'm sure it did.
And to have one of your idols kind of metaphorically see you and acknowledge you in that way. Well, my friend, I could talk to you all day, but I know it's late there in Germany, and I really, really appreciate you. You are a wealth of wisdom and information, and I'm sincerely grateful for you to share your thoughts and career with all of us. So thank you for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. It's an honor. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there we have it. The legend of Bonita Hyman right here with us on the Daniel Hendrick Experience. Thank you for being here. And, folks, don't forget when you get a chance, go to the website and look up my book, Know You Know, the story of my life as an opera singer, losing my voice and getting it back. So, until next time, God bless you all, and we'll see you next Sunday on the Daniel Hendrick Experience. Take